All right guys, today we are going to be talking about Xona Rotor and their new S-line of turbochargers. And with that S-line, their new UHF turbine wheel and why it's such a game changer in the world of performance aftermarket turbos. For the basics and kind of just to give you a background of why we're talking about this, what we're talking about, I'm just going to assume that people don't really understand how a turbocharger works. So there's going to be, a turbo is going to be bolted to an exhaust manifold. From that exhaust manifold, exhaust gases will exit the manifold into the turbine housing, spin the turbine wheel. It will then exit out of the turbo into a downpipe. That turbine wheel connects a shaft down to the compressor wheel. That compressor wheel is going to spin. It's going to take in air from the air intake, and it's going to compress it and shoot it into the intake manifold of the engine itself. Obviously, there's much more complexities here, and there's a lot more involved in that, but just a basic idea so you can kind of take some of the things that we're saying and make sense of them on an actual turbocharger. Is it my hat? Oh, turn the brightness up, fam. Good news, I did the entire video blind. All right, you're still filming, so I don't really have to do anything. Over the last couple of years, Xona Rotor has been a name that's been synonymous with racing. We've been seeing it pop up on a lot of the class legal cars, some of the bigger power street cars. Just a company that's kind of filled with bringing new innovative stuff to the market. They're partnering with a lot of major companies. Kind of a fact that not everybody knows is that it's a partnership between Force Performance turbochargers and Tile Sport. So Force Performance has been a name in turbos for, we're going on 20 years now at this point. They've been synonymous with stock frame turbochargers upgraded, which has been a game changer for all of us, being able to make bigger power with stock manifolds, stock downpipes, or at least stock framed items. And then Tile Sport, they're a company that's been synonymous with US manufacturing. They've made high quality wastegates, blow off valves. Tile actually makes a lot of housings for turbochargers. So they make a stainless steel housing that's high quality, it works very well. It stands up to the abuse that the modern turbo cars are putting through it. And one of the most game changing things that I would say Force Performance has brought to the table is the use of billet wheels in their turbochargers. It's something that was not commonplace 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's been something that we've seen on every single turbocharger since they've really released it. They've brought that mentality, they've brought that innovation level to Xona, and Xona is a brand that's focused on the larger frame turbos. They do offer some stock replacement items, but for the most part, it's designed around the aftermarket manifolds and the bigger turbochargers that won't fit in a stock class most of the time. The partnership's really exciting. There's a lot of new things brought to the table. It's just been something that has it adds a lot of value to the customers at the end of the day that you don't see with some of the current on-the-shelf turbochargers. So we're kind of talking about Xona, what they bring to the table, why they're a turbocharger you should want. Some of the key features that have been the standard the last couple of years is going to be the stainless turbine housings, the nice cast compressor housings, and a billet center section. That's going to be something that you're going to see on all of their turbos. That does not change. That's not an option, that's not an upgrade, that's just who they are. What we're focusing on today is going to be the turbine side, and that turbine side specifically, we're going to be talking about the turbine wheel itself. The UHF wheel, I've seen it called the UHFT, makes me want to say like oofta. Oofta! But that turbine wheel is ultra high flow. What does that mean? Why should that be important to you? To dig deeper into that, we kind of want to touch on something that is a symptom of the turbochargers we've had for the past 20 years, and something that's caused issues, something that's kind of plagued the industry, and something we've kind of always had to overcome via different ways, different innovations, different changes. So that's back pressure. It's basically the inability to get more exhaust gas through the turbo. So you're shoving the air at it, but for one reason or another, it can't get that air through the turbo. It's going to cause the shaft speeds of the turbo to actually slow down. Thus, you're just not able to produce the power that the turbo is capable of. Over the past 15 years or so, all of the things that they've kind of, from manufacturers to people who modify turbos, there's been a couple different ways that they've gone about trying to combat this, trying to improve it, trying to find the magic bullet, per se. We are going to first talk about the actual turbine housing. So where the turbine wheel sits inside of, that's one way you can kind of affect the back pressure on the turbo. The bigger the housing, the less back pressure there's going to be. This is a direct correlation that by the time you get to a large enough housing that you're reducing back pressure, you're no longer efficiently spinning that turbo. It's going to be very laggy, it's going to be very unresponsive. It will be a turbo that's good for nothing but making big power. So there have been a few different attempts at this over the years. The first one is going to be clipping the turbine wheel. So what that's actually doing is cutting back the fins on the turbine wheel and making it easier for the exhaust gas to slide through that. The upside to this is going to allow it to spin faster and allow you to make more peak power with this turbo. The downside is it is less efficient. It's not going to spool up as quickly on the lower side of the RPM band when there's going to be less exhaust gas passing through it and less exhaust energy passing through it. Now that we've kind of talked about the clipping of the wheels and kind of the idea that you're able to spin it faster, make more power, it's going to be less efficient. The next thing that we kind of see become commonplace in the market was going to be actually reducing the fin count, reducing the blades on that turbine wheel. Now the thought process behind this was, once again, reducing the efficiency. You're going to be able to make it so that you can get more exhaust gas into that turbine and more exhaust gas out, and really ramping that speed up. So there are a few misconceptions of this, and people think that by reducing the blades, you're actually making it more efficient, which really just isn't the case. What you're doing is you're actually, by reducing the blade count, you're able to slim down the center section of that turbine wheel. You're able to take a lot of weight out of the turbine. By taking that weight out, you're actually counteracting the efficiency that you've removed from the turbine wheel itself. Therefore, you're able to kind of get best of both worlds. You're able to have a turbine wheel that's going to spool up in a quicker fashion. You're going to get something that's a little bit more responsive, something that you can drive on a car and it's not going to have the freight train hit that we've become used to with the bigger turbos. And you're still going to make that peak power because you're able to get the RPM up on the turbo. You're able to actually get it spinning fast enough to produce the power. All right, so we talked about how removing weight, removing the blades from the turbine wheel, and how that actually improves the spool and also still provides the peak power that we're looking for. Why would we be looking to improve that? Why would we be looking to make any changes? So as we actually make that adjustment, we remove the blades, we reduce the weight, we're actually creating a turbocharger that's more susceptible to wheel stall. It's something that, it's a term when it's basically the turbine wheel cannot overcome the amount of drag or force that is on the compressor wheel. With that compressor wheel, it's going to constantly be pulling air in, it's going to be constantly compressing air. And as we do that, we're going to make it more and more difficult for that compressor shaft, or that turbine shaft, to actually spin and spin the turbine wheel. And by removing blades, we're actually reducing the leverage, removing the leverage that it has to spin that shaft and actually continue producing power with that turbocharger. So there is some downsides. It's not like this is nothing but ups in that kind of design where we actually remove the blades. Commonality was kind of going from 11 blades to 9 blades. That was something you saw pretty often within the industry. Okay, so now we're actually gonna get to the part of the video where any of you actually really care about what I'm saying, is why you should be interested in the new UHF turbos from Xona Rotor. So the big change, the big reason why you should be interested in these is the turbine wheel. This ultra high flow turbine wheel from Xona Rotor. This wheel is something that we don't see often in the automotive aftermarket. It's something that kind of gives us a win-win. We don't have a trade-off. We don't lose anything. We don't go backwards just to go forward. So often we're used to making a big power car that doesn't drive well on the street, or a car that drives well on the street, but it's just not as fast as your buddies. We have a turbocharger that can do it all here. What they've done is they've actually staggered the turbine wheel. So the blades on the wheel are staggered. So we have a tall over short, we have a long over small, whatever words you want to use to describe it. We are able to keep a traditional blade count, and we're able to continue to have that efficiency that we want out of it. But we're able to cut the weight out and make it easier for the exhaust gases to slide through that turbine. What we have is a turbo that's not only going to make the peak power we want, it's going to also reduce that back pressure and make it a little bit more efficient on the low end. So we're able to have a turbo that will spool up and make power, making this one of the most unique things on the market right now, and something that should be very, very interesting to those of you guys that actually use your cars and drive them and want that power band that's wide and can work at all times. We see these a lot in the big power street cars or in a lot of the race classes that this is very beneficial for, say, a smaller turbo guy. Turbo 4 cylinders, that's not a motor that's meant to make 1,000 horsepower. There's a lot of effort involved in that. There's a lot of thought process that goes behind that. These turbochargers are developed with that in mind. We do have the ultra high flow turbine wheel. Xona Rotor will still offer all of their turbochargers in a standard configuration, a standard blade count, non-staggered. The reason for this is there's so many setups out there. There are people that are going to benefit from a full blade count turbine wheel. You're still going to have much better low end response with it. It's still going to be the turbocharger that fits a lot of people's very specific needs. This is something that's really important, and we care a lot about making sure you get exactly what you want for your setup. Feel free to give us a call. We have a lot of sales reps here waiting for your phone call to talk about your turbocharger needs. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have and actually steer you in the direction of what's going to fit your setup best.